Cornish Mutual, farming insurance experts.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Farming Focus, the podcast for South West farmers brought to you by Cornish Mutual. I'm your host, Peter Green, and in today's episode, we're turning our attention to the topic of how to inspire and engage the next generation about farming. There's a huge opportunity to connect young people with the land and perhaps even spark future careers in agriculture. But what's the best way to do this? Can we get more children onto farms? And how can we connect children and schools with farms? To discuss this topic, I'm joined by Cambridgeshire farmer and the founder of Farmer Time, Tom Martin, and Louise Wallis, who is the Education Officer for the South West branch of the Farming and Wildlife Advisory Group, or FWAG for short. Tom, welcome to the show. Can you briefly introduce yourself and Farmer Time, please?
Yeah, I'd be delighted to. My name's Tom Martin. I'm a mixed farmer up here in Cambridgeshire. We're on a family farm. I've been back here for about 10 years, and we are passionate about a lot of things, but one of them is helping people to see what happens on the other side of the farm gate. And as part of that, 7 years ago, we founded Farmer Time. We connect farmers with teachers around the UK so that they can have a series of video calls every 2 or 3 weeks from the farm to the classroom, directly engaging with the children and basically bringing their curriculum learning to life. We're demonstrating, we're illustrating exactly what they're learning in the classroom using our farms and our farmers.
Fantastic. Great stuff. Look forward to hearing more about that. Louise, welcome to you too. Can you introduce yourself and the work that you do with FWAG Southwest, please?
Yes, of course. Hello, Peter. My name is Louise, and I, as you said, I'm the Education Officer for FWAG Southwest. As part of that role, I coordinate the Kingfisher project based in Somerset, which was set up over 30 years ago now by the late poet laureate Ted Hughes and some of his friends, and they set it up in Devon, and it's branched out across the Southwest and is a regional. So there's a Kingfisher project that runs in each county within the Southwest, and I coordinate the Somerset one as well as supporting the other counties, and also go to support other farming events off-site, so like Farming Country in Cornwall, and go to those events and just doing some hands-on supporting young people and schools to get outside and link farming and wildlife.
That's great. Thank you ever so much. So, Louise, how effective do you think agriculture as an industry is at connecting young people with farming?
I think there are some really good examples and pockets of really positive work that's happening across the UK. But as with all things, I think there's an element of moving with the times, and there's still a lot of room for improvement. Like I said, there's some really, really innovative projects that are out there that are kind of trying to connect with young people in a way that young people connect these days, which perhaps is not linked to the traditional way people have gone into agriculture, or young people have moved that sort of trajectory, and it's changing, and I think we need to change with it.
Yeah, I think we'd all agree with that one. And actually, Tom, you with Farmer Time have been doing a lot of that connecting in perhaps non-traditional ways that Louise talked about. Why do you think that direct connection with a farmer is so powerful for children?
Well, everybody learns differently. Some of us can learn by reading, others by experiencing things, others by listening, others by watching and observing. So it's really important that actually our classrooms cater to all those learning styles. And for many children, just hearing and maybe reading things, it perhaps doesn't suit their style. Bringing that learning to life by having a real life farmer with a real life farm right in front of them on the screen, and the interactivity for them to engage their curiosity, to actually ask questions, and the thrill of having those questions answered live, as well as going through the entire year with those farmers. So not just a one-off call, but actually having that relationship of seeing that farmer, seeing that farm, going through the autumn, the winter, through into spring and summer is so important. And of course, while children are in school, they're also starting to formulate an idea of what they're going to be doing in future. So they're thinking about careers, they're thinking about what jobs might suit them and how their classroom learning relates to their future. Well, they get to see that right in front of them with Farmer Time as well.
Yeah. Absolutely. So Tom's talked there, Louise, a little bit about how we might be sowing the seed, no pun intended, for possible future careers. But why else is it important to get children actually onto farmers as well as learning about farming in the classroom? Is it about building awareness of where food comes from, or understanding nature, perhaps shaping how they think about land and the countryside more broadly? What are your thoughts, Louise?
Well, I think it's all of that and so much more. I think obviously from a learning and a career point of view, it's really vital that young people have those opportunities to actually see. But I think it's also it's more deeply rooted than that. It's about having that connection to where we live, where we belong, how we exist, and linking that farming and the nature. I mean, there was a lovely quote by David Attenborough that says, if children don't grow up knowing about nature and appreciating it, they'll not understand it. And if they don't understand it, how will they protect it? And if they don't protect it, who will? And I think that is really important across, what we're doing within my role at FWAG and the Kingfisher project. It's making those connections. And I really believe that if children don't experience it, and like Tom was saying, we're all different learners. We all have different learning styles. And so it's not a case of saying children should only learn about farming and wildlife on a farm and not in the classroom or not on a screen. It should be all of that. There should be lots of different opportunities for different learning styles and for teachers to engage, because it's about lighting that spark for those children. And I think for a lot of children that perhaps would go into industries, whether it's farming, but those practical, they need those skills from an early onset.
Thank you, Louise. Tom, I can see you nodding your head there. I'm interested in that piece, just briefly, about educators, teachers, those people that are guiding our children, and how best we can perhaps engage with them, and what it is that can sort of spark something in them, and them in turn pass that on to children, please.
Well, that's exactly it. If we're not exciting our teachers, then how can we have them inspire the children? The teachers are the gatekeepers of the classroom, and rightly so. But we often find that our teachers who have a huge, broad experience across a whole range of subjects often don't know quite so much about farming. And that's a way that we found actually at Farmer Time and a lot of other charities, we have to start helping those teachers. I think teaching them feels a little bit belittling, but we need to start helping them to understand a little bit more, and particularly to understand the applications. We spend a lot of time talking with teachers who say, well, actually, we're studying genetics at the moment, so there's not really any application to farming. And I say, well, every farmer in the UK can talk genetics. We're constantly trying to engineer healthier plants and animals and plants that grow faster and more resistant to disease. But those teachers, if they weren't aware of that genetic application, and that was just one of myriad applications, then they won't be able to bring that into the classroom, and the children won't be able to get the most out of that particular topic.
Yeah. So you must see some real breakthroughs with teachers as well as children, Tom.
Absolutely. I had a great experience a year or so ago, and the teacher sent me a message in the morning before we were due to do our call on a Friday afternoon and said, look, just to warn you, the children are a bit hot and bothered today. They've been outside, it's a hot day. You may not get quite so much out of them. So I said, well, look, I'm a bit hot and bothered as well. Let's just go around the farm and we'll play a game. Can you guess what implement this is? So I thought I'd start at the beginning of the farm year. We had an old plough in, and I kind of cleared the brambles off, and I said, right, look, children, this is a tool that we use on the farm. These are shears that dig into the ground. What do you think this could be? The first answer was a combine harvester. And normally I say, that's a great answer, but it's not right. I mean, I couldn't even bring myself to say it. It was a terrible answer. But I say, okay, well, that's not right. I said, just think at harvest time. Sometimes we sing in the harvest festival the song, we something the fields and scatter the good seed on the land. And I heard the teacher say, oh, I know. And I thought, gosh, that's helping me to realize I've got to pitch at a totally different level, even to bring the teacher on board, let alone the children.
Yeah, we're so often guilty of living within our own context too much, aren't we? And actually, we need to really broaden it.
That's right. And when I talk about being passionate about helping people to see what happens on the other side of the farm gate, sometimes I think that's us as well as farmers. We need to help each other to see what happens on the other side of the farm gate. We've got different terminology and different understandings.
Yeah, that's a fantastic thought, thinking about what happens on the other side of the farm gate from the general public side, but as well as our side. Yeah, love that. So, Louise, we've heard a little bit about the reasons for bringing people, and particularly children, onto farm, and some of the different ways that we can engage and the different sort of approaches. But what role do charities and organisations like FWAG play in making those connections possible?
A vital role, I think, and they can be, they can use their platform because, so for example, FWAG has farm advisors, so they're connected to farmers already. So it's kind of using that connection to then sort of open the doors. And there's farmers that would be in stewardship schemes that perhaps have their educational access as well. So using that and connecting that and then being the link between the schools is really, really vital. And children and young people, like we've already said, they're our future farmers, they're our future engineers, conservationists, scientists. So it's really vital that organisations use their connections to kind of join those jigsaw pieces together, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've been fortunate enough to just help out for a couple of days on one of the Kingfisher projects when the primary school children came to a single farm in my parish, and it was such an enriching experience for me as much as for the children, just sort of understanding where they're coming from. And Tom, you sort of talked a little bit about the perspective, certainly of that teacher when you were mentioning we plough the fields and scatter, and actually seeing the perspective of those children and understanding their engagement with food and where it comes from. It's a really positive experience. Louise, in your view, what more could government or local authorities do to help schools and farmers link up more easily?
I mean, I don't know. I don't know what the magic answer is, but it's things like transport that is a big issue. So, and also that kind of credibility from the farmers. So gone are the days where you might have a grandparent in the school and the children can walk as a class up to the local farmer without kind of going through quite a rigorous tick box system to get the children off site. So making those things easier. And I think things like the educational access and having that as a credible sort of accredited scheme, if you like, kind of helps aid the schools getting out. Whether there's a way, because transport often is a massive barrier because it's so expensive, and also just time within the education system. And that would be kind of reshaping sort of the curriculum, which perhaps is quite a big ask. But I think to go back to what Tom was saying just now, is the fact that teachers coming out as well, it's as enlightening for them as it is for the children. And I think they sometimes just don't have the time or the capacity within the schools to think outside the box and think laterally. It's almost seen as an extra, and actually it should be seen as an essential. So, what Tom was saying about weaving it in and helping the teachers weave it into their curriculum is not teaching them to teach, but it's just helping aid their job, I suppose. I've kind of gone off piece, sorry, from the sort of local authority and government side, but I think it's transport would be a massive issue. And just schools having the ratios to get them off-site and making that easier. But how you do that, I really don't know. But I know from a teacher's point of view, their time is so restricted within a school that they just don't have time to think outside the box, really.
Yeah. Tom, you're nodding there. Anything to add?
Well, one of the things that government can do is that recognise that virtual visits are a complement to those physical visits and fund them for SFI. Our calls are kind of 10 to 15 minutes of targeted content. And so I've said for some time that kind of 5 or 6 farmer time calls would equate to one kind of 90-minute to 2-hour in-person call. And really, our virtual calls, we're the gateway to physical visits. And one of the things Louise was talking about, which I hear all the time, is about transport. And if I was to basically sum up one of the most common statements we hear from teachers at the beginning of our farmer time school year is, we just don't have the funding or the time to do a school visit. And yet by the end of the year, we hear, oh, we're going on a school visit next week. And they've found the budget, they've found the funding because they see the value. The money is there within schools, but they have to see the value of it. So it's helping those teachers to recognise that and to make the case to those internal stakeholders, the people who hold the purse strings.
Yeah. Louise, just quickly.
Yeah, can I just adding to that, the value, definitely the value. And again, with the Kingfisher project, it's free. So we get funding throughout the year. So it's free for schools to attend. I pay for the buses, and I still don't always get a full take up. I have to kind of go back to schools. So like you say, getting into the schools, you're saying this is a free project. You come out, it's not just a farm visit. You're then doing a project. I help you link it into the curriculum for a whole term. And then you come back to the farm again, and I will pay for your transport because we apply for funding throughout the year. And it's still, I find it, and this is not just me in Somerset, this is across the other counties, that unless you get a teacher or a head teacher that is engaged and interested, and exactly as Tom was saying, sees the value in that, and they're not seeing it as additional work, it's really hard to get beyond that.
So, Louise, practically, we've got a community of people listening in the Southwest who have connections to farming. If there's someone who has children at primary school or grandchildren at primary school, and they'd love for those children or grandchildren to get out on a farm visit, what can they do in terms of making one of those Kingfisher visits happen?
Badger the school in a really nice way, but raise that and raise the importance to the teachers and the heads and the school staff, I think, and also making it possible, offering to be that a member of the ratios,
liaison,
and to go within the school trips as well, because quite often the ratios are a massive issue for getting children or a class off site. So if you've got parents and grandparents willing and seeing the value to be able to support the schools to do that, that would be really important. And putting their hands up and saying, actually, we can help with that and we can do this, is really important. And getting involved, because that, like I said, there is a Kingfisher in every county, a Kingfisher project, and it's all free.
Brilliant. Thank you ever so much. So we talked a little bit about the how there and getting children onto farms. Something which has really come across to me loud and clear over the last few months. I've been really fortunate to go and see some different countries. When I was in New Zealand, we were told that 95% of their population are connected to agriculture within 1 or 2 generations. So a parent, an uncle, a sibling, a grandparent potentially will be involved in agriculture. 95%. Now, I don't know the numbers, but I'm guessing in the UK we're probably more like the reciprocal. Perhaps 10% of the population has somebody involved in farming or food production within a couple of generations. And I wonder if that distance between the general public and farming contributes to people not knowing quite so much about farming as perhaps they might. Tom, we talked a little bit about whether we can help young people to consider agriculture as a career. And, I think this can address that gap. If we can, through visits, through farmer time, get people to be thinking about agriculture as a career, how can we sustain that interest by making farming continue to look positive and exciting and a viable career path?
Well, Peter, great question. And I think, first of all, it's worth remembering that, yes, we've never been more divorced from where our food comes from, but people have never been more interested. Call it the Clarkson effect, but I don't think it's just down to him. I think there's a lot of other things that have gone on through food and through wildlife and through, various different things that mean that people are absolutely fascinated with farming. And I think connecting that to the potential for them, it's not just about being somebody who stands in a field shouting at their dog and chewing a bit of straw and saying, get off my land. Actually, there are so many opportunities. And if these children, the next generation, if they're the top flight software programmers or drone pilots or engineers or mechanics or biologists, technicians, we absolutely need them. But we also need to show them that there's an opportunity. If you wanted to be a scientist, you wouldn't think about food tech necessarily. If you wanted to be a top engineer, you perhaps wouldn't think about agricultural engineering. Or we've got to make sure that that's front and center when young people are making those career choices, and they need to see people like them doing those jobs already. So it's a little bit of everybody needs to be part of this. Everybody needs to play their part, whether it's hosting a farm visit, being part of Farmer Time, writing in the parish magazine, doing something via social media, having conversations in a pub, doing a school visit, whatever it might be. Actually, it's going to take the whole industry. We're only 1% of the UK population, so we need to make sure we get bang for our buck in encouraging the brightest and best into food and farming.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a rallying call if ever there was one. Everyone needs to play their part, definitely. And if you want to have a bit of a sneak peek of what agriculture might look like with more tech involvement, we spoke in episode 4 of this series to Matt Dobbs and Adam Short about where ag tech might take us. So please go back and listen to that episode. Talking of previous episodes, back in Series 2, Episode 8, we spoke to Pete and Jenny Olds about the Farmers a Shop Window and about Open Farm Sunday. We mentioned then that conversations with farmers about getting more members of the public in general onto farms can quickly turn to the barriers such as funding, health, safety, logistics. Louise, how can we overcome those sorts of things?
Well, with some joined up thinking, I think, and having that passion and wanting to get particularly young people in schools. There are barriers to funding, there are barriers to health and safety, and there are barriers to logistics. To overcome them, I mean, obviously we've already touched on kind of what government and local authorities can do to kind of particularly get school children out on practical visits on a farm, and obviously transport is one of those barriers, so maybe subsidising or funding some of that, which I know one county does do for their educational access. They part pay for the funding for the transport, so that would overcome that barrier. I think there are health and safety barriers, but I think some of them, perhaps dare I say, are perceived rather than real. You know, I think sometimes it's a bit of a knee-jerk reaction to kind of go, we can't do that because of health and safety. Whereas actually, when you actually look at it, it's not as risky as perhaps first is overcome. And obviously the logistics of sort of the schools and the staffing and the ratios. And that goes back to kind of getting the community involved and the school, as in the school community, and using grandparents and connections within the school and using other organisations as well to help overcome those logistics.
Thank you, Louise. And I know that Cornish Mutual have helped with their risk management service, some people to work on their health and safety risk assessments. So that's something which they have done, certainly for some clients.
Cornish Mutual, farming insurance experts.
I'm bringing you in now, Tom. Do you see a link between engaging children with farming and encouraging healthier food choices? So, and in what ways might learning about where food comes from and how it's grown shape both healthier choices, but also support for the farming sector? You spoke earlier about how there's perhaps never been more interest in farming. Do you think we can build on that?
Yeah, and I think it's been pretty well documented that children who engage with nature, who engage with where their food comes from, absolutely make healthier choices. They make more sustainable choices. Young people are wonderful citizens. They really care about what's going on around them, and just that little, that little drop of education, of engagement, of excitement, can really kind of bring them into that conversation, and just inspires them absolutely to make different food choices. And I can think an awakening within UK agriculture to the fact that we really, really, all of us need to engage with that next generation, and then we'll see the differences absolutely in the young people who are the consumers of tomorrow. In the workforce of tomorrow, we need them. And wouldn't it be great if we could see a difference in the politicians of tomorrow? One of the things that we always say is one of the farmer time goals is that the farmers of tomorrow won't be able to complain that the politicians of tomorrow don't understand farming, because if we can get to 100,000 children a year, that means that 1 in 10, that means that in Parliament, statistically about 30 to 40 parliamentarians will have been part of Farmer Time, will have an understanding, an actual knowledge, a relationship with food farming and with farmers as well, which is really exciting.
Yeah. And actually, surely that again comes back to your previous point that we all have to play our part there. If we're going to make that happen, we all do need to just do a little bit of something to play our part. And your previous answer actually reminded me of when we spoke with Kendra Hall and Anna Jones back in, I think it was Series 1, about engagement and about how we can talk about farming in a more positive way. Louise, coming to you, what simple things do you think families or schools as well can do to connect children with farming or nature in everyday life?
I think certainly within families to immerse themselves, because I think if you're looking just at a family unit, the simple things, which I know not necessarily directly linked to farming per se, but is indirectly walking to school, classic. How many times are you walking to school and you're asking about what's in the field, what's in the hedge, why are they doing that, what's that bit of machinery, which is where a lot of those conversations and that interest is sparked from. Now, I know that's not always easy and it's not always practical, and life's not like that, and it's not rose tinted glasses, but those are some of the simple things that could be done to immersing yourself in that environment and taking an interest rather than just assuming it and asking those questions. We're all consumers. So when you go to the supermarket and you're buying your veg or your meat, or if you do buy it in the supermarket, then thinking about it and thinking about those food choices and saying, well, actually, because there are a lot of misconceptions out there. And I think there is, going back to previous questions, there is a place for people like Tom that's doing the farmer time, and then, us that can help dispel some of those misconceptions and just not telling people what they should or shouldn't they be doing, but just getting them to ask themselves those questions, because we are all responsible consumers. So I think those are really simple things that can be done. Engage in local opportunities, whether it's things like Open Farm Sunday or other kind of community or organised sort of groups that they can go to. And even linking into sort of the more nature side of things. So whether it's your Wildlife Trust, your RSPB, and just kind of knitting all of that together, be open, and obviously those contacts within the schools as well. So grandparents, and like you say, that generational. And that's when you were talking about that just now, it kind of reminded me, particularly with Kingfisher. So we don't just get the schools out. We have volunteers that a lot of them are retired. And for me, it's actually the multi-generational sharing down that knowledge, because it's not just stuff you learn within a school. We need those generations to be sharing that information. And I'm really passionate about that, because otherwise that gets lost, that history gets lost.
There's a whole culture and legacy piece that's in here as well. But sadly, we probably don't have time to go through that today.
No. And also I think, gone are the days where the assumptions are made that information is passed down from generation to generation. Like Tom was saying, we're looking at bringing people into farming and agriculture sort of as an industry, because I think historically it probably would have just been handed down and there was very little room for people to come in from the outside, whereas now we're wanting and needing people to come in from the outside, whereas it perhaps hasn't always been that easy. So we're having to think outside the box again to bring people in and make it an attractive career choice.
Yeah, there's a real cultural shift there in farming. You're absolutely right. So, Tom, we've heard a little bit there about what families and schools can do in terms of connection, but what about farmers? We talked about everyone doing their bit, and you just sort of touched on it briefly, but what is it that farmers can do to make sure that we're reinforcing this connection?
I think it's take every opportunity, and we mentioned different learning styles for our children. There are different. We're all different. We all want to do, and we're able to do different things. I would love people to sign up. farmertime.uk. It's 10 minutes every 2 or 3 weeks. You can go live to a classroom. The teacher will tell you what they're studying before, so you've got plenty of time to prepare. And loads of farmers tell me it's the highlight of that week. But it might be hosting a school visit. It might be going into school with a tractor, or being part of I think the NFU do tractors into schools and various different things. It might be taking a more active role in the local harvest festival, or it might be hosting a farm walk. Don't forget that actually teachers, when they're not at school, are normal people, and they go and do other things. They go for walks, and they go on farm visits. It might be that if you're hosting a farm tour, that one of the people there is a teacher, and that might be the way that they get in. But it comes down to the very, very simple things, chance to have a conversation in a pub, to put up a sign next to a footpath, to probably revise the way we engage with the public. Sometimes we're feeling a bit grumpy when they're doing something they shouldn't be, or when they're somewhere they shouldn't be. It's taking every opportunity. And just to finish off, when I came back to the farm, I got in touch with the editor of the local parish magazine in about 6 parishes. Would you be interested in me kind of sharing a bit about what goes on the farm? And the response was within 2 minutes. Definitely. I've been wanting this for so long. Thank you. Just, and guys, you use AI, just get ChatGPT to write it, and you can top and tail it and edit it. Let's be as simple and straightforward. We make it as simple and as accessible as possible. If you've got 10 minutes, you can be part of Farmer Time. If you've got a day a year, you can host a school visit. If you've got, an hour a month, you can write in the local magazine.
Fantastic. What great suggestions, Tom. So you've been on your family's farm again, or you've been back at your family's farm for about 10 years. Let's look forward now, Tom. Where would you like us to be in 10 years' time when we're talking about this topic?
Well, apart from 10% of parliamentarians having been through farmer time and having, but I think kind of broader than that, it's having that understanding. I just feel as farmers we spend, and recently at some of the party conferences and the various different demonstrations earlier in the year, we've been saying, the politicians do not understand us. They don't understand what we do. They don't understand how we do it, and they don't understand the value of what we do. Well, actually, these educational visits are about engaging with children, about helping them make healthier food choices, about helping them make career choices. But actually, if nationally we got to the point again where we're valuing our farmers and farmers are feeling valued, that's the paradigm shift, I think, that could and should come from this. But I finish as I start. It's going to take all of us, whatever our skills and competences are. Let's just do whatever we can do. And I think then we'll be absolutely unstoppable.
Fantastic. We'll be absolutely unstoppable. Wow, I love that. Louise, over to you. What's the vision for engagement between farms and children?
Yeah, just no barriers. Definitely to break down some of those misconceptions, to not have any barriers, and to kind of have that real connection, not be frightened to kind of step outside the box, not be frightened to approach your local farmer and say, actually, I've seen what's going on. Please, can you educate my children? And to kind of have that real local connection, because again, I find that a lot of groups we work with, their knowledge is so great of the big wide world, but actually their knowledge of what's on their doorstep and under their feet is really quite poor. So having that real connection rooted to where we exist, where we live, whether it's in the east, whether it's in the west, that kind of. So I think, and to have a higher percentage, like you were saying about your percentage in New Zealand of those connected through the generations, to have a much higher percentage within the UK.
Fantastic. Wow, what a brilliant episode. To my guests, to Tom Martin and to Louise Wallis, thank you ever so much for a great conversation.
Cornish Mutual, farming insurance experts.
It never gets any easier to narrow down our showstoppers, especially after a great conversation like we've had today. We heard that if children grow up not knowing about nature and appreciating it, they won't understand it. And if they don't understand it, they won't protect it. We know it's important for farmers and farms to engage with people all around us, but particularly children, so that they grow up with an understanding of what goes on. But it's also important to be dealing and engaging with those people that teach our children. We talked about teachers and how important it is to make sure that we engage with them and we're able to talk to them in a way that's easy for them to access. There's other ways of engaging with the wider community as well. We talked about having conversations at the pub or the shop, about writing in a parish magazine, about getting involved in local organisations. But why should we do this? Well, Louise told us that actually it's about strengthening the rural community at a time when it can feel a little bit under attack. It's so important that we talk about the history and the traditions and what's been going on in the countryside for generations to help foster it as we go into a new era. And finally, as farmers, this is an opportunity. This is an opportunity for us to step out of our context and to see our industry through the eyes of others. And that is one of the key ways that we're going to be most able to move forward.
Cornish Mutual, farming insurance experts.
Join us next week for a bonus episode when we'll be discussing how to get children interested in farming. If you've enjoyed today's episode, then make sure you subscribe to the Farming Focus podcast on your favourite podcast platform so that you never miss a show. We talked about lots of different episodes that we've recorded in the past today, and don't forget that you can listen to all of our previous episodes by going back to our back catalogue on the Cornish Mutual website or your favourite podcast platform. So if you're a new listener or just want to listen to your favourite podcasts again, go and search them now. We'd also love to hear from you with any feedback you have about the podcast or questions and suggestions. Send us an email to podcast@cornishmutual.co.uk. Check out the show notes for more information on today's episode, including the link to our podcast disclaimer. You've been listening to Farming Focus, brought to you by Cornish Mutual. I've been Peter Green. Until next time, it's goodbye from me and everyone in the Cornish Mutual podcast team.
Cornish Mutual, farming insurance experts.